Hello, welcome to this week's episode of What One Thing. One business, one story, and one lesson to take away and action every week for small business owners looking to grow. I'm Phil Davenport.
I'm Hayley Baxter, and today we've got the pleasure of talking to Jenna Farmer. So, Jenna, hello, thank you for coming on and being a guest on our podcast. We're just going to start with a few quick questions about your business, just so we get a feel for it. So tell us how long you've been in business.
I've been in business for around 8 years.
Amazing. All the way through the lovely COVID years there. And do you have a team?
So I have, my sister-in-law works for me 2 days a week, and that's about it.
Good. And is your business working business to business, or do you work to the end consumer?
No, it's business to business.
Okay. And did you set your business up from scratch, or was it a business that you acquired along the way?
I set it up from scratch.
Okay, that's super. So we've got a little bit of what your business is about and what it's like. So take us back then to your journey and how what you did before you started your business and what the journey was like to making that transition into a business owner.
Yes, so I used to be an English teacher, and I moved abroad to teach in China, and I was teaching there, and I suddenly become really unwell, and I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and that journey led me to start talking about it. I created a blog and I started to talk about it in the media. When I came back to England, I had grown a following online, and it led to lots of different opportunities by being featured in magazines and newspapers, asked to write a book and all of these things. So I really saw how accidentally PR really changed my whole life, because I was able to leave my job in teaching and write full time, and it gave me all these amazing opportunities, like writing a book and visiting all these different amazing places and writing for some of my favourite newspapers and magazines. And then that's how I sort of transitioned into journalism. So I used to write for lots of newspapers and magazines. And after a few years, mainly just sort of when we were going into lockdown actually, people were asking me how did you do that? How did you use PR and sort of become that person that got these roles writing for all these different magazines and newspapers? And that's when I transitioned into PR to help people do what I had done, to find their story, to talk about it in the media, and sort of become that person where they were constantly getting all these exciting opportunities through PR.
So I've got to go straight in there, Jen, and say, you just kind of really skimmed over that you went to China. I mean, you clearly got some drive. What was the ambition? Was it something you'd always wanted to do? Or how did that opportunity arise for you?
Well, because I was a teacher back in the UK, so I was a secondary English teacher. So there always are opportunities to sort of teach abroad when you're a secondary English teacher. Obviously, it's quite an in-demand subject. So we just got married and we were looking for teachers before we started a family. So we were looking at international teaching sort of jobs. And yeah, there was just an opportunity that came that way to teach in China, and I thought we would just give it a go.
Phenomenal. And what led you, obviously you got Crohn's, came back to the UK. A friend of mine has kind of had Crohn's often, and it's really, it can be a huge thing on the scale, can't it? Or it can be relatively minor. What was the drive to not go back into employment again, but think, I'm going to reach out on my own?
Yeah, I think, it was definitely, first of all, it was definitely a culture shock, teaching abroad in China, to then coming back and teaching in the English sector. So, when in China, the relationship that students and teachers have, and teachers are really put on a pedestal, and then obviously when you come back to a state school in the Midlands, you are not put on a pedestal. So it was a bit of a culture shock to come back to the UK. Obviously the system was really different. I really loved teaching in China. I didn't really love it so much when I came back to England. And then I actually had an operation, and it's really an incompatible career, I think, with having a chronic illness, because you're either in the classroom or you're off sick. It's not like you can have a phased return, or you can work from an office, you can work from home. And so it was just becoming less and less compatible with my condition. And, having had sort of more freedom and flexibility when I was working abroad, it was really hard to come back to sort of the Ofsted regulated system, when I was back in the UK. I started to learn how it just really wasn't compatible with my health, with my mental health, with what I wanted to do with my life. And by then I was starting to get in the media, I sort of saw my way out, really, like saw an opportunity to sort of try something completely different.
I think it's really interesting because I think health and mental well-being is such a big part of sometimes why we do venture into starting our own businesses. That's certainly part of my kind of story, you know, working in corporate, being a bit overwhelmed, stressed and all of that. How do you, but what happens is then you start a business and you go like, then really you're just out of the frying pan into the fire, aren't you? How do you make sure that your business works for you on that health front rather than the other way round, which does happen for so many business owners?
Well, I think a lot of my stress when I was in traditional employment came from like office politics and like all of those sorts of things, having to, you know, work a set schedule, having to deal with things that I didn't want to do. And so I think, you know, when I removed all of those things, it instantly became a lot easier. And I realised that a lot of the things I told myself about business, you know, when I worked in the classroom, I was like, well, I'm not particularly ambitious or career driven, or I realised that none of that was actually true. I just didn't want to do it in that way. So I think, you know, I just removed so much stress, and I absolutely love what I do anyway. So, and I always am very grateful, and I remind myself, like, however stressed I am, like trying to get 30-15-year-olds to learn business talent on their GCSE, like that does not compare. I'm always like, you know, it's fine, you can't be that stressed. But I just think, yeah, I learned, you know, what time of day works best for me, like how best to be time, and just having that flexibility. I realised that actually, you know, I could work a lot of hours, and you do work a lot of hours when you don't business. But it was things that I wanted to do, and it's on my terms, and like my community, and I can take forward to the breaks.
One thing that I'm really interested in, Jenna, is I can't think, and I worked in the public sector for about a year, and I couldn't handle it. It was much too regimented. I can't imagine moving from that regimented environment to all of a sudden you're a freestyle journalist and you're master of your own kind of fate. How did you find the transition from, you know, I've got class at 9, another class at 9:45, I've got to do this, mark homework here, to all of a sudden just having this open, free world where you could just do whatever you want? Was it intimidating, or did you love it, or how did you find it?
I wasn't as structured. I always say, like, obviously, I've got a 6-year-old now, and I always say, like, I wish I had, like, when you have a child, I feel like you develop so much organisation, you can get so much done in like 2 hours. So I always say, if I had this level of organisation now that I did like back then, I'd literally be a millionaire, because at the time I would like get up late and it would always work out, but I wasn't very regimented, like you say, because it could just be any time. So it could be at 10 o'clock at night, I could have a lie-in. And as someone that had spent, you know, all of my life, because before I was a teacher, I was also a civil servant, so I'd literally spent all of my career in like regimented, like day. So for the first few years, it was definitely a bit of a learning curve, and I definitely didn't really do great like structural routine. And then when I had my little boy, and obviously you have like less hours in the day, that really helped me in a way, because it forced me to be really productive and set more of a schedule, because suddenly like the day wasn't opened up like it used to be.
So I think I often talk about this as well, because I think that's interesting, because when you do go from that structure, and when I first started my business, because I used to be employed and I worked 9 till 5, and then you're like that, sometimes I got a bit of guilt about I wasn't at my desk by 9 a.m. Whereas it feels like you didn't have that, you were just like
I wasn't at my desk.
I think that's fantastic, because I used to worry about it, and it took me a while, and sometimes even now I can be like, oh no, I feel like I need to be working. So how did you have that transition, Phil?
I found it really terrifying when I moved from, if we call it engineer, where I had a ticket came in, I fixed it, another ticket came in, I fixed it, another ticket came in, I fixed it, lovely. And I think, if I'm honest with you, I mean, as with all of my decisions, badly would be my answer, but I found it very hard to move into an open, free roaming world where I didn't have things. And what I've done more recently is I've started calendar blocking. And that's been really essential for me, so that I do have structure to the day. I know that I've got to do something. And it also means, because I'm, as we've discussed, an idiot, when people ask me to do stuff, I will traditionally just go, yeah, and I'll hop on it and try and help them out. And now I can say, no, I've got that calendar blocked in. How about yourself, Jenna? How do you organise your day to day at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm definitely, like I say, now I only sort of work in the school hours because I've got a little one. I'm definitely a lot more organised. So I use like a timer on my Chromebook where I like sort of create tasks and stick to the timer. I have like a planner that's like by the hour. But because of it PR, you can't necessarily like, for example, block certain clients on certain days because PR is really reactive. So if there's a breaking story about something that is to do with one of my clients, then suddenly like that client has to become the focus for that day. So it can be quite hard to like compartmentalise that way because of that. But I use like Trello and Google Calendar, and then like I say, a planner that's hour by hour. But I've also learned sometimes that you have to be sort of flexible, and it's not the sort of job, especially if you get I get such a dopamine hit when I get the piece of coverage for a client, but like I just like chase that high. So like I do have like a schedule, but if like I say, if something comes in that's like breaking news, let's say like for example like the government changes, like the way that small businesses can register for tax, and I've got an accountant, and all of a sudden that day has got to be their focus because it's going to be all over the media. So it can be quite tricky to sort of organise your day when your job is really based around reacting to what's in the news.
I definitely think that feels challenging.
Yeah.
On your journey then, you talked about how you had people ask you how you had made that journey into getting into the media and so on and so forth. And I'm guessing that's then where your first client came from, because people
Yes.
approached you rather than you going out to try and get a client, which is again possibly a bit more unique than more of a traditional way of starting a business. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so being a journalist, I was speaking to business owners and PRs all of the time. I had a job where I was writing the shopping guides for the independents, so I was speaking to a lot of like private businesses and a lot of different businesses. And so I started to see obviously how a PR worked, because I would see it from their angle, I would meet up with PRs, and then after featuring some of the businesses and hearing like the effect that it had on their business and their growth, especially if it was a small business that had sort of accidentally got in touch with me and sort of like featured them. And one of them, after featuring me, said like, "Oh, can you do this for me again? Like, can you tell me how to do it? I sort of stumbled upon you. Can you talk to me about how you can like build a story around me and pitch me to different places?" And then after that person got results, they told somebody else, and it just sort of snowballed from that, really.
Absolutely love that. And what's one decision that you made early on within that kind of first year that you look back on and think, Jenna, you son of a gun, what a fantastic decision that was?
I think that I don't have a journalism degree and I don't have a PR degree, so I think that could have put me off. But I felt like I had proven that somebody that had no contacts or qualifications and got the sort of media coverage for themselves that changed their lives. So I just really backed myself and thought, if I can do that for myself, then I know I can do it for other people as well. And so I guess not having those doubts and recognising that, I wasn't an agency, that I wasn't in London, I was quite different to a lot of the PRs out there, and just stepping into that rather than trying to sort of make myself something that I'm not.
That's so refreshing to hear somebody be so confident in themselves and back themselves right at that early stage, because that's so often not the story, is it? Was that conscious? Is that just who you are as a person? Was it a journey you went on? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think it was just, I felt like I had so many barriers to being in the media, like I'm from Birmingham, a very working class, like I didn't have those connections, or couldn't even, I remember like when I was younger, I'd always wanted to work in the, it just seemed so far away. Obviously it's like an hour now on the train. I don't know if the trains have got quicker or it just felt metaphorically further, because now I'm like, this is ridiculous. You could have just gone on the train for a day when you were younger, but it just felt like so far away. So I think like, yeah, I'm not always the person to like really back myself, but I guess that I had been the perfect case study about that, and that's why I'm always saying to people that you don't have to hire an agency, it doesn't have to be like a massive thing with PR. If you've got a good story and talk about it, people will pick it up. And I think because I've just seen that firsthand, that I felt like I was the most unlikely candidate for it, because I didn't have a clue in the beginning what I was doing. I felt like, well, if you can do it for that person, then you can sort of do it for anyone.
I particularly love that. I think especially as small business owners, one of our biggest things that we think about, first we price check ourselves against everybody on bloody websites, which is a terrible idea. If you're a small business owner, terrible idea. And secondly, we have that fear that, oh, what about the big agencies? What about the bit? But actually your massive strength is that they're working direct with the business owner. They're working with somebody who really cares and is really invested about their business, rather than working with Globocorp or, you know, some massive organisation where they've got no say and kind of sway over you. You're just another number in their books.
Yeah.
Have you done any kind of advertising? I mean, you're flipping writing PR articles all the time. Maybe it's a stupid question, but any kind of, you know, proactive? Have you been to networking groups? Have you put adverts out, or has everything just kind of stemmed from word of mouth for you?
So I think definitely probably up until like last year or so, like everything really came from word of mouth, and then. Obviously, as I started to think a bit more strategically over the last year or two, I started to focus on different things. It's quite hard when you've got a young child. My son's autistic as well, so I don't have like a huge amount of childcare to be like networking here and there. So, you know, up until probably last year, I hadn't spoken on any stages, I hadn't done any networking, and I'd still managed to grow like a 6-figure business. So I was really pleased with that, because I feel like we sort of feel like we should be doing more networking, we should be doing, but I just personally didn't have that capacity. I do as much as I can online, so I have my own podcast where I talk about PR and give those sort of PR advice and Instagram. So probably over the last year or two, I have focused more on social media to reach sort of a bigger audience, because I now have like my membership, which is where you get like a little bit of support and some opportunities when you do PR yourself. So obviously when you move from like a one-to-one model, like a one-to-many type model, obviously you need like a bigger audience. But yeah, definitely for those first few years when it was just like the one-to-one, it really was just like people passing on a recommendation. And of course, being a journalist, I still wrote some articles and I still write for the media anyway, so people would see those articles as well. So it sort of did a bit of the job for me.
As you're going on, because it feels like your business is changing in the past year or so, I can definitely feel that. What sort of one, because we're always looking to improve and make things better and add more value to our clients and so on. I feel like really, if you start a business, that's just part of who you are. What's one area of your business that you'd like to improve on?
I would say one thing that I have been really working on this year, so I'm not sure, I feel like it's in quite a good place now, but if you had asked me 6 months ago, I worked with someone that really like helped me map out like the customer journey and all the different points. I think one of the problems we have with something like PR, like I feel like it's so achievable because I did it myself, and obviously now I've done it for so many people that I feel like it's something that you could just do in a couple of minutes. So when I did like courses or memberships, I just thought that everyone else would sort of have that like immediate, like I can do this, and like it could just be so similar to everyone else, because I was like, well, I did it. So that was like, I had to learn actually about how to like really map out, like when you're doing a course or a training, and map out the sort of user experience, so to speak. So now, you know, like having checkpoints halfway through where people can give you the feedback, and really trying to make sure that there's no one left behind that day. So that's something that I've really been working on this year, because I think there's a real problem we sometimes have of thinking, because it's in our head, it's like common knowledge, it's really simple. So trying to go back a few steps and take it slower, and like go back to my teaching roots, I guess, of like having check-in, not grading people, but you know, like how are we doing, what can I help you with? And that has been a bit of an education. It's almost like going back and sort of and scrambling stuff that I've done to make sure that it's really easy to follow. And I think I probably can do a bit more work on that.
And because I am nosy, Jenna, what happened a year ago to start this transformation? Because you seem to have kind of rocketed in the past 12 months, if you will do. What was the catalyst? What was the spark that ignited it?
I think so. One thing that I did do probably in the last year or two was like join like masterminds. So if you don't like a mastermind, just really like a small group of business owners, and where you have like hot seats and advice. And I'd always been like in bigger communities, like asking general questions. But it was really useful to see how other business owners were doing things. And I think part of that was like the logistics and processes, which I just hadn't thought about, because a lot of my logistics and processes were just like ad hoc, like, oh yeah, you've seen me, let's have a chat sort of thing. And I realised, obviously people that have got bigger teams or like automation, just sort of like how they were sort of thinking about things at every single point. And I think I had such good experiences with clients that, of course, I've had like a contract, but I've never even thought of like having like a proper onboarding system. So a lot of it had come from like conversations. Yeah, let's give it a go. Let's have a chat. So I guess being around more like people that had started in a more strategic way than me and seeing how they've really thought about every process made me think, oh, I've got to go back here and go through those processes, because mine are just sort of evolved so organically. But I think if you can get into those groups of like small groups of business owners, I found that really, really helpful to just see exactly how people are doing it step by step.
I totally agree with that, and totally, yeah, everything that you just said. And I think getting to that point of realising that, because I'm not always like the most want to go out and have conversations with people and meet people and all of that. Like, I'd just rather ignore people. That sounds awful, doesn't it? But there you go. But the truth is that when you do start opening up and go into either masterminds, or I've done it before, I've been to like events that people have held where, like, I suppose more like a training day, but actually they go into those things and like meeting those business owners. That was really a pivotal moment in my business journey as well, because you just realise that there is this world of people that are on the same journey as you, but doing things in a way that you've never thought about or hadn't considered, because you're just so into like doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I massively, and I feel like every day or every month, I don't quite know what the right words are, but the more that I do that and I interact with those groups and I widen that network in whatever way I do it, it only seems to bring benefit, which I didn't always realise that going back to the start of my business journey.
Yeah, definitely, I agree.
I think there's such a huge difference between, and we've all been employees here, and an employee mindset and an employee kind of, what, they're not paying you up front, just tell them to pay up front. And you say, well, that's not. Whereas when you work with other business owners, you get two things. One, you get the perspective of somebody who's on the same journey and having the same issues. And two, a lot of your hurdles, barriers, whatever we want to call them, are broken, because somebody will sit opposite you and just say, no, we did do that. When you're saying it's impossible, or we can't do this, or I couldn't ask this of people, they say, no, we do. And then you ask around the room and all of a sudden everybody does but you. And you realise, oh God, actually I'm missing a huge piece of, whether it's value you're creating, whether it's margin you bring in, whatever it is. And I think that probably leads us beautifully on to the purpose of this podcast, and the name of the podcast is What One Thing. We generally talk about 4 levers. There might be 3, but I say 4. And you can either, to improve and grow your business, you can either bring on board new customers, you can increase your services and revenue to existing customers, you can cut costs, or you can improve efficiency. Now, your What One Thing may cover all of those, it might just do one of them. But Jenna, what one thing has been pivotal in really growing and improving your business?
So I think it could come under 2 of them. So I think one thing that really was pivotal. What am I going to say? Pivotal. No.
We probably won't edit that out, Jenna, because I didn't make the mistake, so we'll probably leave that one in now.
One thing was moving away from one thing was moving away from an hourly rate to just sort of service packages. So this was something that it took me quite long to do, but like I said earlier on, I realised that with PR, it's really hard to say, right, I'm only going to work for you on Monday, because if that breaking story comes out on Tuesday, we need to get involved. So I realised that charging by the day or by the hour just wasn't worth me, and I just came up with like a project fee instead, because I also realised some of the stuff that I was doing. I remember that once, I wrote a press release out and sent it to the Times, and my client got featured in the Times, and I realised that had only cost them about £12, because it took me 20 minutes to write the press release, and I just thought something isn't working here. And then similarly, something that would take hours and hours and hours wouldn't necessarily equate the same way. So I realised that to just charge by my packages made a massive difference. So I think really think about if charging by the hour, because you get quicker, you get better, but then your rate still changes the same, and the impact that you have on businesses often gets better, but again, your rate still stays the same. So thinking about if that is really working for you, because as soon as I charged, it changed to charging by a project or on a retainer. It just got so much easier.
I think that's a really good what one thing, and I think it is a challenge for lots of businesses. And I think, well, I've definitely been on that journey from charging by the hour to charging packages, and it feels impossible. It's one of those things like Phil was just talking about, where you sit in a room with people and they're like, no, but I do that, and I do that, and it feels impossible when you're in that moment making that transition, but it's definitely worth it, and it does change your business.
Definitely.
Shameless plug time. Tell people what's next for your business. Share a little bit more about your business, where people can connect with you, and what kind of clients you're looking for to bring into your world.
So you can connect with me in a few ways. So I'm on Instagram at Jenna Farmer PR, and I have a Facebook group which is called Get Your Business in the Media with Jenna Farmer. And I also finally have a podcast which is called PR in Your Property. So those are really great ways to connect with me. And there's a few different things that I'm doing. I'm really trying to, now my son is a little bit older, focus on in-person things more, and really giving people like the space to come together for a few hours and just get their PR done. So I've got one of those next week, but I'll have some more, I'm sure, when this comes out. So I'm just trying to find different ways to give people as many different choices as possible to do their PR, whether that's in a room with me for a few hours, whether it's my membership where I send like press opportunities to you via WhatsApp. It's all about just making it like really accessible and really easy, so it doesn't just get one of those things that you just put off and put off.
So I'm guessing, and I might be wrong here, Jenna, that you've got maybe 2 ideal clients, maybe more than that. You've got your bigger clients who want the completely done for you service, and then you've got the kind of semi-DIY customers, should we call it, where you're helping them with a guided journey, but it's much more interaction from that. Is that kind of the ideal people you're looking for? Or
Yeah, so I work with sometimes brand new businesses that just want to get started straight away, which I think is such a good idea, and that tends to be with the done with you, like joining my membership or coming to one of my days, where they know that they can't afford long-term like one-to-one PR help, but I give them like a starting board. And then some of my other clients who are really established and, you know, multi-6-figure or 7-figure businesses that just want to hand that over. But often it really is the same person, it's just often different parts in their business journey. And sometimes, you know, they start off working with me like a membership, and then as their business grows and grows, we then work together one-to-one.
I certainly know from my experience, both doing my accounts and then having Hayley help me, and people doing their own IT, that often just purely due to financials, we do it ourselves. And it's only when we meet an expert like yourself, Jenna, that we suddenly go, I've been doing it maybe not completely wrong, but I've missed so much opportunity and value, especially in your space where it could literally be growing the business to get the expert in. Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have found one thing to help move your business forward. I think there's probably like about 20 things in this episode, but there you go.
It's been something, if I'm honest, I've never really thought about the world of PR, and you've just, now I know that Hayley and myself both be going away and just having a brainstorm off the back of this. If you've found this episode useful, then please do us a favour, share it with someone else who's on the same business journey as you are, and we'll see you all next time on What One Thing.